Hello and welcome to today's video. This video is my January wrap up. I'm going to tell you a few little basics about my statistics of my reading month, and then I will talk about all the books that I read during the month, tell you my star ratings, and if I have, you know, anything specific to say, I will say it. A little bit like a mini review basically. But yeah, I will talk about all the books that I've read. So let's just get into it. I do have some statistics here. I think the important ones to talk about are that I read 8 books during January, so I'm really happy with that. Like, it is the lowest it's been in a while. In 2023 my lowest read months were 10 books, so it is lower, but I did want to slow down a bit. I don't know, I feel like I wanted to look for quality over quantity, and I feel like I've managed to lower it down, but I still don't feel amazing about my reading month. And in terms of pages read, I read 2,826 pages overall, so yeah, good number, fine with it. I don't really have anything to compare it to because I am intentionally trying to slow down and be a bit more thoughtful about my reading this year, so I don't really have anything to compare those numbers with, but I'm happy with them. Then in terms of star ratings, I gave out 1 2-star, 2 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 1 5-star. So my average rating was 3.6, which I feel like is why I don't feel so great about it, because my average rating for all of 2023 was 4.1. So a 3.6 reading month definitely doesn't feel great. To be perfectly honest, I feel like there's at least one book that I should have DNF'd, and the other book that I feel kind of negative towards, I will talk about a bit more, but I've actually never read anything like it before, so I don't feel like I should have DNF'd it because I wanted to give it a full chance, and now I know not to pick up that. So I guess it's not the worst. I've learned from the month. There is one I should have DNF'd, but we'll talk to that when I get to it. In terms of genres read, I read 1 poetry, 1 literary fiction, 1 urban fantasy, 1 fantasy romance, 2 fantasy, 1 historical fantasy, and 1 magical realism. And then in terms of how I read them, which I think is the final statistic we really need to look through, all the rest are ones that I find interesting but I don't think they're really necessary. I read 4 of the books physically, I read 2 of the books mixed media, so either physical and audio or ebook and audio. I read 1 book just through audio, and I read 1 book just as an ebook. So yeah, I think that's it. That's all the statistics that I think are important. If there's any other statistics that you'd like me to mention in this wrap up video, definitely let me know, because I can. I feel like I've told you the most important ones, the ones that really give you the best quick overview of my reading, but I do track loads of different things, so let me know if there are any others that you think would be interesting enough to include in this video. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to talk about, so let's get into the individual books. The first book I read in January, and then also the first book I read of the year, was Euphoria by F.S. Youssef. This is a very small little poetry collection, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. It's on the lower end of the poetry that I keep after reading, but I do want to keep it after reading. I did enjoy it. I did find it good, and I found some poems really good. I have read this author's latest poetry collection and gave it 5 stars. Thought it was amazing. They don't have anything new coming out that I can see, but they do have 3 or 4 collections, backlist essentially, things that have already come out before I was aware of them. So I do want to give them a go. I'm not too bothered by the fact I gave it 3.5 stars. I think this might be the debut collection. There's definitely no other collections in the start of it where you'd expect to see the author's other work, so I think this is a debut. So for me to give the latest one that I've read 5 stars and the first one that was written 3.5 stars, my hope is that the more I check out the author, even though they are backlist, they're gonna continue to get closer to the 5-star than the 3.5 star, or at least that's the hope. And there were still some really good poems in this. There were ones that I really liked. The one that I think I took a picture of and put on my Instagram because I really liked it, so I'll insert that picture over here. That is from this collection. And yeah, I'm really glad that I read it. I would say if you enjoy poetry, if you enjoy like gentle thoughtful poetry, then give it a go. On the back of it, it says, I can wander far from my origins, but I know I'll be welcomed home with open arms. Yeah, it was good. I'm glad I read it. I'm still learning about poetry, I'm still learning what I like and dislike, and I definitely like this style and like this author, and yeah, I will read more in the future. Then the second book I read of the year was called So Late in the Day. Now, to be perfectly honest, this is the one I should have DNF'd. I get a little bit stressy about numbers and number goals, so when I started the year I really just wanted to read a couple of books the first day, so I picked out a poetry collection, the one we've just spoken about, and I also picked out this book to read like the first day of the year because it was so small, and I didn't feel like I was investing a lot of time in it, but by the time I came away from it I did feel like I invested a lot of mental energy into it. It's already on the unhaul pile, like it will be gone, and I ended up giving it 2 stars. The more I think about it, the lower I feel like I should have rated it. But yeah, like I don't feel like I can tell you much without spoiling the story. I don't really think it's a spoiler, but it is kind of treated in the book as if it is like a shocking thing, and I've read other people's reviews that have spoilers since reading it, and it does seem like some people view it that way. So I don't want to say anything. If you are interested in my full thoughts, if you know, like this is a book you've already read or this is a book you don't see yourself reading, I will have my Goodreads review of this link down below, because you can just put spoiler warnings, and if you're interested in also reading the spoiler section you can just click it and see. But yeah, essentially the main character, the main person we follow, is just a miserable, horrible person. I won't say more than that, but yeah, this just isn't my sort of book. I essentially picked it up because I don't really like slice of life books very much, but like loads of people really seem to enjoy them, so I thought like a shorter style. And when I say shorter style, I think this book is literally about 40 pages. It's not long at all. I thought like maybe the slice of life would have worked for me in the shorter format, and I'm still willing to give that another try with a slice of life book that's actually focused on a character that I don't hate. So yeah, that's that. Then I read Archangel's Shadows. This is the 7th book in the Guild Hunter series, and in this one we mainly follow Ash. I would say like we definitely get more than one point of view in this book, but I would say the main person, the main story we're following is Ash, or Ashwini. I can't say more because it's book 7 in a series, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was really good, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars overall. It was so close to being a 5-star. I do think that the more I read of this series, the closer they get into 5 stars. Yeah, I think I actually surprisingly like the books that aren't set in New York. Like most of the books are set in New York City, which this one also is, but I do feel like I find myself enjoying a bit more the books where we have to have that setup of where we are as well, whereas these ones now, because so many are in New York, they aren't really having that same setup, which isn't a negative. I just feel like it's important saying. I feel like potentially, well, the story wouldn't work if it wasn't set in New York in this one, but I do feel like following these people in a different location, that could have been the formula to get to that 5 stars. I really don't know, but yeah, let me see if I've wrote anything down, because I do write full reviews in like my personal reading journal, but a lot of it's spoilers because they're just for me. Let me see if I've wrote anything down that isn't spoilery. It picked up straight after the end of book 6, which I did think was important, but what I did find really interesting, so at the end of book 6, again I can't say much, I'm quite far into the series, at the end of book 6 something quite big happens at the end, or at least something that from the characters we're following in book 6 is seen as quite this big thing. But then because we're following different characters and different point of views in this one, it's really interesting because it picks up almost straight after those events, but because we're seeing from someone else's perspective and like someone else's life, basically, this big thing that at the end of the book 6 is like, whoa, like how much of an impact is this going to have on the story? Well, from this character's point of view, it's something that happened, but it's not seen as this big thing. So I found that whole thing very interesting. And the other thing I say, the 2 main characters that we follow in this book, it was really interesting to see them because they felt like those same people that we'd seen from other people's perspectives, but being in their point of view, it was like they were the same but with so many more layers. And yeah, that is one thing that I really like about this series. It does seem to show lots of layers of lots of different people, and you do keep getting see and learn more about lots of people, and I'm very intrigued to continue on and learn more about some of the people that we don't know so much about. Then I read Gleam. This is the third book in the Plated Prisoner series, and it is my only 5-star read of the month. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought it was so good. This to me is such a bingeable series. I didn't love book 1, and I was quite worried that the events of book 1 were just going to be like very like trauma dumpy and they weren't really going to be relevant, but I do feel like after having read book 3 we can see character growth having been with the character through all of those events in book 1. And yeah, this one essentially, after reading book 1 there was a lot of things that I was like, in book 2 I really hope this stuff happens, and it felt like in book 2 those things started to happen, but in this one, book 3, those things that I really felt like needed to happen to progress the characters and progress the story, they really all like came and like, well, happened. So it was really good. I don't think I know you anything about this, because from book 1 the story after that is so different. Literally everything I wrote here, if it's not a spoiler for this book, it's a spoiler for book 2, being like, oh, I'm glad we still see this, I'm glad this is still happening, but they're all book 2 things, like they're not things that you'd know going into it. Yeah, it's 5 stars, it's great. I would say definitely check trigger warnings, but if you haven't read the Plated Prisoner series and you are interested in it, give it a go. It's like a King Midas retelling book from Oren's perspective, and there's a lot of twists, there's a lot of turns. That's all I can really say. There was one quote that I really liked, which I have started in my reading journal for 2024, like it's a new thing I'm trying, is having like a little favourite quote badge basically, like so every month I get to pick a quote that was my favourite, and this is my favourite quote, and it says, "Sometimes you look at the silver lining so much that you drift into denial about the clouds." And I just thought that was really interesting. So yeah, that's that one. Then I eventually read The Colour of Magic. This is the first book in the Discworld by Terry Pratchett. I meant to read this last January, so I am a year late, I'm pretty sure, to join in around the Disc in 800 days. I'm now 100% confident I'm not going to catch up with it. However, after reading this one, I definitely want to continue on with the Discworld and learn more. This did only get a 3 stars. Like, it wasn't the best in any way. I didn't love it, but I did find it really interesting. I found it really easy to follow. And this is such a big world that I want to understand. And I did my first attempt at reading this. I was going through it, listening to the audio because I couldn't figure out the pronunciations, at the same time as reading it physically and like really underlining and tabbing and anything important, anything that might be building up on the world. I made it 26 pages in doing that, and I was just getting myself so confused, and it was literally taking me hours to read tiny little sections, that what I ended up doing was just putting the physical book down and listening to the audio book just like really slow, and just having fun with it and going along with the flow. And by the end of it I did feel like I understood most of the things that I was meant to understand, and like I understood the basic parameters of this world and what we're meant to be seeing. I'm not sure. It's a very difficult one, but I feel like the more I read the more I'll understand. I definitely want to continue on. What I did find interesting that I didn't know, and I don't know if this is the same for all the Discworld books or just this first one, but the way it essentially read was like it was like 4 interconnected short stories rather than one continual storyline. So yeah, I'm intrigued, and obviously I know a lot of the Discworld books follow different characters, and I feel like following some different characters would definitely help as well. A lot of the things were quite confusing, and I feel like a lot of those were just like based around the character rather than the world itself. So yeah, my basic thoughts at the end of this was I really enjoyed it. I had really like silly fun with it, and I liked one of the magical creatures that was revealed to be in this series. I liked the luggage, which I don't feel like is a spoiler, it's introduced on like the first few pages, but you can also see it on the front of the book. I like the luggage, and I just really disliked the way that the people in this book seem to judge and think less of others a lot. Like, it seemed like a lot that was the case. So yeah, that's that one. Overall, glad I'm reading it, glad I've read it. We'll definitely continue on, but don't think it's the best start to a series or a world I've ever read. Then I read Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This has only just come out this month, and I read it because I really enjoyed Emily Wilde. I think I gave the first book 4 stars, and I was so hopeful that it was going to continue getting better and better and better, and unfortunately I gave this 3 stars. It didn't really work great for me. All of the things that I personally disliked about book one were even more prevalent in this and were even more the focus of the story. There is it's a fantasy romance, like subtly, like it's more cozy and more academic, but there is a sort of fantasy romance, so that's not a spoiler. And there is a romance that starts developing, I would say, in book one, and I just don't care about it. I don't believe it. I don't see anything about it, and that is such a big focus of this second book that there was so much of it I wasn't invested in. There was also, like, we only get one person's perspective in this book. It's written as if it's a diary and it's just one person writing this diary. And there are many times that it was either revealed later on that someone else knew something and just hadn't spoke up, I guess is the best way to put it. Or it felt even more to me in this one, like it really would have benefited from more than just the one perspective. So yeah. Oh, and this one also played on like memory issues, like having a big chunk of the story, like even more than what I felt was silly in book one, being like a lot of time passing due to memory issues. This one did it even more. It's just really not something I enjoy. So although I like the vibes of it, I like the atmosphere, I like the scholarly, academic-y setting, I think a big problem for this one is the characters for me, the relationships, and also what feels sometimes like quite lazy out of following through some situations. So yeah, that's probably an unpopular opinion, but like I feel like you need to be invested in the romance to enjoy this one. I'd be surprised if there's someone who doesn't like the romance and does like this one, because so much of it was focused on this. And then I had my first and only reread of the month, and that was Reign of Shadows and Endings. This is the first book in the Legacy series, which is a series that is set up in a similar magical way as the Lady of Darkness series. Definitely recommend reading Lady of Darkness series first before this one, else some of the big reveals and spoilers in Lady of Darkness will not feel like that, because this is a different world, a different place. There's different things that are just known and different things that are unknown. So yeah, I reread it. I gave it 4.5 stars, which is actually, I increased my rating. The first time I read this I gave it 4 stars, and I read it straight after Lady of Darkness, and that's just like my favourite series. Like it's my favourite series of last year. Like honestly, the more I think about it, I feel like it's up there, or potentially like a favourite series of all time. So like it's not that surprising that going straight into this and expecting that, like I didn't. But 4.5 star this time, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I reread it, because there were quite a few reveals at the end and I didn't remember all of them because of how many there were in that end chunk. And the reason I reread it is book 2 is coming out in February, so I wanted to make sure I'd got it all stored up here. And yeah, this is a book that I read just on audio, and it was like my nighttime book, because I did, you know, remember and understand most of it. I only read it 2-3 months ago, but yeah, I had a really fun time rereading it. And I don't want to say much about it because it's so different to Lady of Darkness, and because of how the worlds are set up, I definitely recommend reading Lady of Darkness first. And I feel like even some of the things that you find out in the synopsis of this one are reveals for Lady of Darkness. I don't know, not reveals, but like they're unknown when you start that series. I don't know. I really need to figure out a way to speak about the Lady of Darkness and the Legacy series, because I feel like I get into this like rambly mess every time I talk about them, because I need to figure out what is spoiler and what isn't, and what I can say. So yeah, before I read any more of any of that, I'm going to figure that out before the next time I have to talk about it in a video. And then the very last book that I read of the month was a short story collection called Tea Leaves. I did end up giving this a 3.5 star rating, which I rounded up. The average rating of this one was 3.25 stars, and that is because I rated each individual short story. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think that short story collections where either the short stories aren't connected, so I still have something to follow along with and something to connect with and want to see more from, or short story collections that are not already in like a pre-established series are for me. This was a short story collection. All of them were completely separate from each other. Some of them, I mean, I read this on Kindle, so I don't know how many pages it was, but some of them it was like, oh, 40 minutes, and then some of them it was like 3 minutes. So it was really very different, and I don't think it works for me. I don't think I'll read any more short story collections like this. However, I really enjoyed the writing style, so I would definitely read a full-length novel by the author. And I also really enjoyed some of the stories. Like, there were multiple stories, I would say 2 to 3, where I was like, I just want more of this. This feels like the first chapter or an introduction to a story, and I just want more and I want to learn more. So I'm also excited about the possibility that maybe in the future they could be expanded on. But yeah, for a very quick like rundown, I gave Scene 2.5 stars, Of the Air and Land 3.5, Under Her White Stars 4, Deadbeat 3, Mass for Mass 4, House Guest 2.5, The Girls the Crows Followed 4, Ah Well 3, The Colour of Cream 2, Tea Leaves 3, Trial 4, Borealis 3.5 stars, A Theory on Lamppost 4 stars, and then again to the next 2, The Oak I Knew 4, and The Age of Oceanus 3. Yeah, I would say if you like short story collections, give it a go. I really like the writing style, like the writing itself was really nice. And I also feel like if you enjoy kind of like the storytelling style of like a season of Black Mirror, where you just get this very short amount of time seeing this one thing and then you move on to the next, like that's just done, it's gone, no matter how small a snippet you saw, it's done, then you could enjoy this. That's just not really something I like. And I didn't realise going into this, I think, that the stories weren't interconnected. But this was also an ARC, so I did get this through NetGalley as an e-ARC provided by the publisher. And those are all of the books that I read during January, the first month of the year. I feel like I'm still excited for the year. I definitely feel like I am going to be more intentional with my reading. Like, just looking at January alone, I want to also now start being more intentional. However, I also want to do a few more projects, and I feel like that sometimes counteracts it, because if I'm doing a project I want to give a book a full chance, whereas maybe if I wasn't doing it for a project I would DNF. But I also want to DNF more. That second book of the year I should have DNF'd. I 100% know that now, and I didn't. So yeah. Oh, I did actually also DNF a book in January. I DNF'd Belladonna. It wasn't for me. I'm upset about it because the book's so pretty, the cover's so pretty. I didn't make it very far in, maybe 10%, maybe 20%, like it wasn't far. And my very short that I've wrote in my little DNF section is, it was boring, predictable and irritating. The main character was insufferable and I'd already guessed a lot of the reveals. Yeah, so after I decided to DNF it and be done with it properly, I went online and googled, like, you know, Belladonna plot synopsis, plot recap. And I read through it, and some of the reveals, it looks like you don't learn to like the 80-90% mark, like they were obvious within the first bit. So I was very happy with myself for DNFing that, and I feel like because that happened after reading that book that I gave 2 stars, I'd already got in my head like, if you're not enjoying it, DNF it. So I did follow through with that, and I will continue to follow through with that. So yeah, that was my January reading month. I do really hope that you enjoyed the video. Do let me know down below how your reading's going so far this year. Do give the video a like if you liked it. Subscribe down below for more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!